Hello, I'm Bailey Leisure, and I'm back with another NFL video as I recap what happened in Week 9 of the 2018 NFL. So to start off, the Thursday night football game matchup between the Dolphins and the Texans. This was a game that was just dominated by the Houston Texans. And they've been on a hot streak now as they've won 5 in a row as they went on to win this game 42 to 23, I believe the score was. It wasn't without repercussions. I think the big story that happened out of this was that they lost Will Fuller for the rest of the season due to a torn ACL, and that was a big blow to them. That's why I'm going to talk about the NFL trades that happened afterwards because they made a trade in response to this move. But Houston right now they're red hot. Miami's kind of after a good start they're kind of falling off a little bit. And Houston just continues to dominate what I think is once again a weak AFC South. The Eagles versus the Jaguars. This game was played in London, and I gotta say this was a game. Carson Wentz played a really good game. This was a pretty close game between the Eagles and Jaguars, like I probably expected, but as both these teams have been off to disappointing starts. Carson Wentz threw for 286 yards and 3 touchdowns. Blake Bortles actually played well, I thought, as well as he threw that same amount of yards. He only threw 1 touchdown, but he didn't turn the ball over, and he's been dealing with some injury issues. And I just, they've been disappointing, but I think in the division they're in, they're not quite out of it yet. It's really going to be interesting after the bye week when they get Leonard Fournette back and see how much he helps the offense. But they got to pick it up because they got a tough schedule the rest of the way if they want any chance of making the post. The Broncos versus the Chiefs. This game was surprisingly close. Patrick Mahomes threw, what can I say, another great performance, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. Kareem Hunt had that big hurdle play and was able to fight his way into the end zone. This was a 1 touchdown score as the Chiefs walked away with a 30-23 victory. The Browns versus the Steelers. This was a game pretty much, Browns actually they just couldn't do much on offense, and once they were able to score touchdowns, the Steelers were just too much for them. I think they had a 6-0 lead in this game. This wasn't. I think the big story out of this was James Conner. I mean, he ran for 146 yards. Ran for a couple touchdowns. I think, Baker Mayfield, I just didn't think he had much time throwing the football. He just was getting pass rushed by that Steelers defense, and there was no room for him to throw. And because of this loss, Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley were fired. And it's about time that Hugh Jackson was fired, if you ask me, and Greg Williams, a coach that was once banned from the NFL for running the Saints bounty defense, is now a head coach. So, pretty amazing. But the Steelers were able to come away with the victory. Bengals versus the Buccaneers at Cincinnati. The Bengals dominated this game, and Jameis Winston, 4 turnovers. And because of after the 4th turnover, they benched him for Ryan Fitzpatrick, who managed to get them to come back and even tied this game up with less than 2 minutes left. But Cincinnati was able to go down the field and kick a game-winning field goal, and they were able to come away with this victory. And because of that, Winston lost his starting job again. And from here on out, it's going to be for next week at least, Ryan Fitzpatrick will be starting. And man, Jameis Winston just seems to prove that he's the biggest bust in the NFL since Ryan Leaf. I mean, probably Jamarcus Russell, but I kind of, with all the off-the-field issues, I kind of compare him more to Ryan Leaf. Jets versus the Bears. The Bears were playing without Khalil Mack in this game, and they really didn't need him. They were able to do just enough to win here, 24-10 game. Trubisky didn't do that much. Threw for a little over 200 yards, threw a couple touchdowns. I think it was just more of a manage the game type of situation. Nobody has to put up amazing statistics. Just play your game plan and you'll win this game, and that's what the Bears did in this game. Ravens versus the Panthers. This was a game that was really dominated by the Panthers. I mean, they got off to a huge lead in this game. Cam Newton, he was able to, only threw for a little over 200 yards passing, but this is a guy, he did run for 50 yards. He scored 3 scores in the game. Carolina's right now, they're one of the, I don't think under the radar, but they're, not hugely exposed. Kind of the red hot team right now, and they keep it up. I think Carolina, they could be one of those under the radar or contenders. So we'll see what happens there. But they were able to come away with the victory in this game, 36-21. Redskins versus the Giants. Man, just once again, Eli Manning just didn't seem to do enough, despite Odell Beckham looking really good. It seems like once again the Redskins were able to come away with the victory. A big reason was Adrian Peterson, what the guy was able to do. Running the ball, ran for almost 150 yards, and this is a running back that's 33 years old, which is old for a running back. But the Redskins, are able to have a little bit more consistency, and they're winning the NFC East currently right now with a 5-2 record. Seahawks versus the Lions. Russell Wilson was able to get a couple scores, and the Seahawks kind of dominated this game, especially in the second half. They were able to pull away a little bit. And they're surprisingly right now at 4-3. I don't know if it's because of the schedule. I'm assuming their schedule gets tougher. I kind of saw this coming going into the season that they weren't going to be completely tanking or one of the worst teams in the NFL because of Russell Wilson. But I still don't think they have really the pieces and the depth to make a playoff run. But you never know. But Seattle right now, they're surprisingly off to above 500, and they were able to come away with the victory in this game. Colts versus the Raiders. These were two of the more underperforming teams in the NFL, and Andrew Luck was able to go throw a couple scores. Mack, the running back, was able to run for over 130 yards and a couple scores. Jack Doyle, who was his top receiver, Andrew Luck's top receiver, the tight end, and he was able to have a pretty good game. For a tight end, he got 6 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown. Derek Carr did throw a couple scores, but it wasn't enough as the Colts were able to win this game 42-20. And that going into another game with under some of the worst teams in the NFL, the 49ers versus the Cardinals, the score at one point, I think in the third quarter, was 5-3. It had a baseball score. But just a couple, the 49ers got a touchdown. They were able to make it a 2-score game. In the fourth quarter, though, Josh Rosen was able to lead a comeback. I think a big part in this game, I think the reason that the Cardinals came back and won this game, Byron Leftwich, this was his first game as the offensive coordinator after they fired Mike McCoy deservingly. I think it was really, they got their top guys on offense more involved, Larry Fitzgerald and David Johnson. Larry was able to get a touchdown. He was able to finish with 100 receiving yards. I liked David Johnson. He didn't run for a lot of yards. He ran for 60 yards. Not bad for on 16 rushing attempts, but they were able to put him out more in the slot, and I think that was a big difference in this game David Johnson is a great wide receiver as well as a running back. So I think that Byron Leftwich definitely used him better. And that was the difference at this game. And Josh Rosen looked pretty good in that fourth quarter. And they went on to win this game 18-15. Moving into the game of the week, the Packers versus the Rams. This was a game, Aaron Rodgers, back and forth. Jared Goff looked good again. Todd Gurley looked good as well. This was a game, this was the first game I think the Rams were really, really tested as I expected. But I thought they would get tested, but the Rams would, win by like 7 to 10 points. But that wasn't the case, and that was really because of Aaron Rodgers. He was just leading his team, and they had an opportunity to win this game. Obviously, the controversy, Ty Montgomery, the kickoff returner, did not kneel. He decided to take it out of the end zone. He proceeded to fumble the ball, and the Rams were able to hold on and win the game. And I'm going to talk. He's in the news when I talk about the trade deadline. But I think had he not fumbled the ball, and there was a lot of frustration from his Packers teammates, and probably deservingly so, because I think everybody expected, including myself, when you have Aaron Rodgers, the comeback king, you give him the ball back. You do not fumble, and all you had to do was take a knee. You're going to get the ball at the 25, and they were inside 2 minutes. Before the 2-minute warning, they could have won they had a timeout. They could have ran the clock out. They were only down by 2 points. That he was going to put them in field goal range. And I think had he not fumbled, I think they would have. I think the Packers would have won this game. But that mistake cost them. But at the same time, I don't think the Rams will be undefeated, and I think that was proven. And I don't think they want to go undefeated. That's kind of who wants that added pressure as each game passes by? But the Rams were able to come away with the victory and stay undefeated for now. Saints versus Vikings rematch of last year's classic NFC divisional playoff game. This was a game that was pretty close in the first half. The Saints were able to pull away from the Vikings in this game. I think there was a couple turnovers that Kirk Cousins made, the interception, I think a fumble as well, that was just costly to them. It's amazing that the Saints were able to win this game, and Drew Brees only threw 120 passing yards. I mean, that's how big, the rest of the team is improving around him. I mean, especially, I think the defense looked, after that week 1 against Ryan Fitzpatrick's Buccaneers, that looked did not look good. But the Saints, they're one of the hot teams, and they got a big matchup coming next week against the Rams. And they could be probably the next, I would, as of right now, I'd put them as the second best team in the NFC up against the Rams. So, but the Saints were able to come away with this victory 30-20. And then the Monday Night Football game between the Patriots and the Bills. This was kind of a slow game, only won by like field goals. Tom Brady didn't really, he threw over 300 yards, but they couldn't get in the end zone. Neither team could. This game, Buffalo, played pretty well on defense, what they were able to do against Tom Brady. But Derek Anderson really couldn't do much, and the rest of that offense. And Buffalo, they're down to backup quarterbacks, so I don't know what to say. But the Patriots, as expected, they were able to win this game 25. So now moving before I get into the trade deadline that happened this past week, I'm going to name my offensive and defensive players of the week. Starting off with the offensive player of the week, I'm going to go with Adrian Peterson. He ran for 150 yards, had a running touchdown, also had a receiving touchdown in this game. What he was able to do at 33, that's pretty amazing. And then defensive player of the week, I'm going to go from the Houston Texans, Tyrann Mathieu. He got a sack, plus I think he had about 6 or 7 total tackles, a couple of them for tackles for losses. And so the Honey Badger, he's been really good for the Texans, and the reason why defense has been a big reason why they've won 5 games in a row. And now I'm going to talk about the trade deadline that happened yesterday as I'm recording this video. There were a couple big trades that happened. First trade I'm going to talk about is Golden Tate from the Detroit Lions. He went to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 3rd-round pick. And I got to say, I thought this was a pretty good move for the Philadelphia Eagles to get some receiver help. And I think he's a good piece on their offense, and I think he'll fit well to complement Carson Wentz and the rest of those guys. And only for a 3rd-round pick, I think that was a pretty good move for the Philadelphia Eagles. And then Houston, as expected, they had to make a move after losing Will Fuller for the rest of the year. And they got it with Demaryius Thomas. There was rumors that he was going to be traded. I think New England was another team that was looking to get him. And they were able to get Houston Texans. They were able to get Demaryius Thomas for a 4th-round pick. And I think they also swapped 7th-round picks between both teams. But I thought this was a pretty good move for Houston. The Rams got another person to get on their big defensive line, as Jacksonville, they traded Devontae Fowler to the LA Rams, and this just helps out their defense even more, and just scary if you're an offensive line trying to block. Packers, they made a couple moves. I'm going to talk about those. Obviously, Ty Montgomery, a lot of people thought he was going to be cut or released or nothing was going to happen, but they traded him to the Baltimore Ravens. Kind of a surprise, kind of surprised. I'm kind of surprised they traded him. But Tom Montgomery, he's an all-around guy now. He's a receiver, running back, special teams, and hopefully that he gets away from that locker room, and maybe it does better for him. But the Packers have made a surprise trade. They traded Clinton Dix to the Washington Redskins, and he's one of their better defensive players. I'm kind of shocked on that, and that was a really good pickup for the Redskins, but it's kind of a head-scratcher for the Packers, and I don't know what they were doing right there. But the Redskins got a really good defensive player, and at a team that's contending for the division right now, that's just going to help them out even more. So, good move for the Redskins. questionable move for them. And that's it for my video this week. As always, follow me on Twitter at BaileyLeisure96. Check out tomorrow for my Week 10 NFL picks video, as I will be going over the pick matches for Week 10 of the 2018 NFL season. If you're a fan of baseball, I just did a World Series recap video. So you can check that out in the description below. Click like if you like the video, subscribe if you like the content on my channel, and leave your comments below on what you thought of the trade deadline and what you thought of this week's action of the week 9 of the 2018 NFL season. So thanks to everybody for watching, and I will see you tomorrow.